Folks, we covered Crystal Ball's response to the Bernie Sanders Cornel West sort of rift, which took place over the weekend, where in response to Cornel West criticizing Bernie for backing Biden, Bernie kind of fired back at Cornel West, saying that he disagrees with Cornel's run and that the progressive community needs to unite around Joe Biden for 2024. Crystal gave a pretty awful take on that, and so my theory is as follows. She got home from work that day and told Kyle, I blew it on my Cornel Bernie take. So listen, babe, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go into my office and I need you to record a take that's even worse so that I look good compared to you. I need you to do that for me. And Kyle said, sure thing. Of course I'll do it. First, let me change into my glow-in-the-dark polyester polo shirt, and I'll get right on this for you. Anything for you, sweetheart.
Now, on the Cornel West front, look, understand something. I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here? What
do you mean, what do you think you're doing here? He's doing what Jill Stein did. He's doing what Howie Hawkins did. He's doing what Gary Johnson did. Joe Jordan, he's running a third-party candidate for president. Like, this just immediately, this, like, suspicion. So what are you up to here? And yes, right. As, I'm sorry, I forget who gave us the super chat. I think that was Pat, said, yeah, just this really condescending attitude from the jump. Like, who are you to fucking lecture Cornel West? What are you doing? What do you think you're doing here? Do you really think you're going to win?
He just, whenever he does these monologues, he just goes on with all this fucking nonsense.
Think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here? Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So in your...
Okay, I'm not going to belabor this point because I've made it 1,000 times. The way to get ranked choice voting is to vote third party. The Democrats and Republicans are never just going to give you ranked choice voting. They're never going to voluntarily surrender their own power. If you start voting third party, then Democrats and Republicans, depending on the district and the dynamics of the race, will see an opportunity in third-party votes to pick up votes on the second rounds. Now, without ranked choice voting, they view you as a spoiler. They will never just give you ranked choice voting. So the idea that we have to wait until we elect the right Democrats or the right Republicans who are kind enough to grant us ranked choice voting and then we can vote third party, that doesn't make any sense. That makes zero sense. That's why we hardly have any districts, municipalities, city states that have implemented ranked choice voting because it's extremely difficult for obvious reasons. They're not going to surrender their grip on power voluntarily out of the kindness of their heart.
Listen, you can vote third party, but you have to wait until Congress votes to cut its own salary.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's like what that's saying. That's what
I mean. It's a typical Democrat argument against doing anything that threatens the establishment, right? You can't do it because the system is set up this way, and until we make this systemic change that's never going to happen, you can't make any effort to create systemic change by actually undermining the establishment that supports that system. You can't do it because Republicans!
Right. You just have to sit back and say, maybe someday, right? Maybe someday.
Right, that's it. That's it. We shall overcome.
Exactly.
Mr. fucking movement.
Yeah, right. Well, he gets to that.
Yeah. Your highest goal that you think you could achieve, is it the 5% for the Green Party? Is that what it is? So that you can get matching funds and make it more viable? But again, I hate to tell you, the Green Party and no third party will be viable unless and until we get ranked choice voting. Because until that point, there's always going to be this perception you're just a spoiler candidate.
Okay, first of all, as I just said, you're not getting ranked choice voting until you start voting in third parties in great enough numbers for the major two parties to see that they need ranked choice voting in order to pick up votes on the second round. Number two, if you poll above 5%, you are a viable party. You're not a winning party, but you're a real party. You get matching federal funds, which means you can grow exponentially at that point. It is a significant thing. Now, all of a sudden, 5% is no big deal. I'm sure there have been times when Kyle, and I know people in that Kyle-adjacent sort of faction of the online sort of indie left commentariat have said 5% is a big deal. Now, all of a sudden, 5% is no big deal anymore? Well, 5%, you're still not viable until you get ranked choice voting. So now that's not a reasonable goal anymore? Since fucking when? Since when? Since you became a Biden bro, since you married up into a $50 million net worth, or since you got involved with the Marianne Williamson campaign? Since when is this not a goal worth pursuing? Because that's never been anybody's take in this space. Everybody's always had 5% as a real sort of milestone for a third party. Now that we have a candidate who's capable of getting us there, now all of a sudden, well, it's not really a good idea anymore. You just see how unbelievably full of shit these people are.
And what's really the difference here from the take you would get from Rachel Maddow?
Of course, right.
What's
exactly.
the difference? Chris Hayes would tell you the same shit, even though he's another one who was whistling a different tune back in the day. You know, Chris Hayes, before he had an MSNBC job, used to actually talk about how to threaten the system and how they're never going to let you create that kind of change. Even, what's the other scumbag they have? Chris O'Donnell?
Lawrence O'Donnell. Is he still
Lawrence
with them?
O'Donnell?
Maybe. Yeah,
Is he still on there? Yeah. That's actually on video. He had a pretty famous
years back.
So, you know, but now they all got their mind right. All these people got their mind right. So, you know, again, I don't understand why you don't just get on the winning team. Like, why even be all indie media? Like, why? Why? Just fucking watch CNN, man. Get with the people with the fucking money who win. Like, why are you going to watch this loser?
They're a good-looking couple. They can get a gig on TV.
Sure.
Easily.
Sure.
And by the way, if we get into a general election and it's Biden versus Trump, and Trump ends up winning because Cornel West got 5% of the vote or something, or 3% of the vote, and he gets blamed, that's going to set the movement back so much. People are going to look at leftists as spoiled brats who are just getting in the way.
No, it will not. No, it will not. It might set back the social democrat, progressive democrat left, but it's not going to set back any real left movement. Left movements in general grow once they flex power, right? And so if Cornel West gets enough support to swing the election, that is a flex of power. That's good for a movement, not bad. When a movement, this so-called movement that these people talk about now, when you place, as Howie Hawkins placed in 2020, and I voted for Howie Hawkins that year, when you finish with 0.75% of the vote and you don't influence anything, that's bad for the movement. That's bad for a real left movement. You're going to actually try and gaslight the audience into believing that Cornel West cracking 5% is going to be bad for the left moving forward. You're actually trying to make that argument.
Well, and I said this with Crystal. What left are you talking about exactly?
Well, that's that's what I mean.
You're not left. The people you represent at this point are not left. You're a cosplayer. You're just cosplaying, and it's increasingly absurd and transparent. Like, what a fucking movement. You look at your shirt. No movement produces people who wear shirts like that. I'm sorry. No credible left movement would have members with shirts like that.
No revolutionary chooses seafoam as the theme color of their show and records something like this in a, like I said, sort of glow in the dark polyester polo.
Now
you're gonna get your mind right, and I mean right.
Kyle got his mind right.
Right.
Now, that's totally separate from the question as to whether or not the spoiler effect actually is real. But there's going to be a perception that it's real, and everybody's going to blame the left for Donald Trump winning.
What left?
Now,
what left are they going to blame?
That
would be pretty funny if they blamed you.
Right. But also good.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to blame you. We're going to tell them it was his idea.
Right. It was Kyle's fault. He undermined Joe Biden by supporting Marianne in the primary. That's what happened. That's what happened. But also just the cowardice of saying, well, maybe the spoiler argument's not a good argument, but they're going to say that about us anyway. And so we have to, cower in fear of being smeared? The left has been smeared for as long as the left has existed.
Right.
If the left is afraid of being smeared by corporate media, then why even have a left? Why not just do sports commentary?
What on earth could you possibly do that would be legitimately left that would not invoke the ire of the media and the establishment?
Exactly.
That's the whole fucking point.
Right. We have to build a left movement that stays on good terms with MSNBC, because if we challenge them too much, they're going to blame us when things go sideways, and we can't have that.
And
just
that
incoherent.
really, I mean, that's, you're making a joke, but that is literally
the
the
subtext of what he's
argument.
saying, yeah.
That is exactly what he's saying, right? The only thing that makes strategic sense is to build a left movement that doesn't piss off Nancy Pelosi. That is
Right, exactly.
there is no such thing. That is impossible. And at that point, again, take off the shirt, go back to your natural hair color, and just be a fucking Democrat.
Right. Exactly.
Guys don't want that to happen. So I'd love to ask Cornel West, like, what exactly are you doing here? Now, if he was going to run, he should have run as a Democrat. Why do I say that? What's he polling at now? 1%?
No.
Mayor
No.
Williamson is barely getting any media coverage.
And you know that because you're a fucking liar.
We have to play this, and then we have to talk about this, because this is where it just gets brazenly dishonest. This is not the first time Kyle has done this, but here we go.
What exactly are you doing here? Now, if he was going to run, he should have run as a Democrat. Why do I say that? What's he polling at now? 1%? Well, Marianne Williamson is barely getting any media coverage, and she's still at 10% or more.
Okay, those numbers are both wrong. Those numbers are both just absolutely, factually wrong. We covered
And
this
I'm
in the
sorry,
last
he
show.
knows it.
Yes,
He knows
of course. Cornel West's last poll, he was at 5. There was a poll before that, he was at 4. The first poll of the cycle, he was at 6. There aren't a lot of polls that include Cornel West now, because most presidential polling doesn't include third parties. There are 2 listed on the Real Clear Politics Average. They're both Emerson polls. One has him at 4. One has him at 5. So actually, Cornel has never, to my knowledge, polled under 4 when included in a poll. I'm not stating that for a fact, because there might be some poll out there, but I'm saying in the major polls that have registered on the sites that aggregate polling data, Cornel has not been below 4. On Real Clear Politics, there's now 1 at 4, 1 at 5. First poll of the cycle, he was at 6. Marianne, on the other hand, who he claims is polling at 10% or more, there's a lot of data on this because she's running as a Democrat. So here's the last, I didn't take the time to count these, looks like a good 25 polls over the past 4 months. Marianne Williamson's average support over the last 4 months, 6.3%. She has never, counter to what Kyle said, placed higher than 10%. And she has only hit that 10% number once here and once here. So she's actually cracked 10% twice in the past 4 months. And he's telling you Cornell's at 1 and she's at 10 or more. Those are just absolute lies. Now, it gets even worse than that, because he's, of course, conflating 2 things. He's conflating Democratic primary polling with general election polling. I'm going to let him talk for a few more seconds, and I'll explain why that is dishonest in and of itself.
So she's at 10 times what Cornel West is, simply because she decided to run as a Democrat.
No. She's at 10 times what Cornel West is, even if he decided to run as a Democrat. That is completely wrong. Let's take his lies at face value. Let's say Marianne Williamson were at 10% and Cornel West were at 1%. Right? How many people vote in Democratic primaries? Roughly 30 million, right? Clinton got, 17 million to Bernie's 13 million in 2016. So let's use that as a rough number. 30 million people vote in Democratic primaries. How many people voted in the last general election? It was about 160 million. So 1% of 160 million is 1.6 million. 10% of 30 million is 3 million. So even if Marianne were at 10 and Cornel West were at 1, that would not mean that Marianne would have 10 times the support of Cornel West. It would mean Marianne would have twice the support of Cornel West, because she'd be at 3 million and he'd be at 1.6. That's if Kyle's numbers were accurate, which they are not. They are wildly inaccurate. As it stands, Cornel West is polling at about 5 and Marianne's polling at about 6, which means actually, in terms of real votes, in terms of real support, Cornel is actually polling better than Marianne Williamson, because Cornel's polls are aggregated for a general election electorate. Marianne's polls are aggregated for a primary Democrat electorate. So even if his numbers were right, which they are nowhere near right, he would still be deceiving his audience.
And even if his actual numbers were equivalent to hers, but he's telling you 10%. She's what, 6.3 average in polls. He's coming in at about 5. Right. So this guy just entered the race. She's been plugging away for months. Even if they were both equivalent polls, he's at about what she is. Even within those terms, even on those terms, assuming he were running as a Democrat. It is amazing that they're so willing to go down with this ship. Like, honestly, when all of these staff reports started coming out, it became clear her polling was only getting worse as time went on. I kind of thought they would just quietly stop talking about it. It's amazing to me how they keep doubling and tripling down.
Exactly. No, they will not let go. Here we go.
I don't know what the strategy is. If you don't have ranked choice voting, if you don't get rid of first past the post voting, you're just doing a virtue signal fest. That's all it is. Like, I believe in good things. Okay.
Go ahead, Russell. I know you have something to add there.
So what exactly are you doing? You are relentlessly propping up. Let's set aside the quality of your fucking Topanga Canyon guru half-ass L. Ron Hubbard knockoff candidate. Okay, let's set aside that bullshit. You are backing a candidate in a primary with a party that we know that even with a viable candidate, they rigged the process to ensure that there was absolutely no way that he could become the nominee. And this is a case where you have an incumbent president where they have told you in no uncertain terms, go get your fucking shine box. We're not having a primary. We're not having a debate. There is no process here. There is no world in which they're going to entertain the idea of a primary. So what exactly are you doing? You're not virtue signaling? There's a more meaningful purpose to what you're doing? Because as my esteemed colleague has often pointed out, Cornel West, provided he can take the heat, will be on the ballot in November. Your candidate will not. So what is the aimless virtue signal? Even if you don't agree with the goals of third-party voters, they will actually have an impact that is impossible with a campaign that can't possibly be on the ballot in November because the party you're running in will not allow it.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. And as you said, that assumes the Marianne Williamson campaign is a remotely serious campaign. But as we know from staff who has left and published a letter, 7 staff members have said she's not even interested in getting on the primary ballot, much less the general election ballot. She doesn't even want a collective run of signatures that would be necessary to get her on the Super Tuesday states. Maybe she's pushing for New Hampshire, even though New Hampshire is going to disqualify whatever delegates actually go to the convention because they're probably going to buck the party and go first, which is against DNC rules. Maybe she'll have enough for New Hampshire. I doubt that even at this point. From what we've heard, it doesn't even sound like she's on pace to do that. But she's not even going to be on the primary ballot.
It's mythical
the
stuff.
General ballot. Right, exactly.
I'm really curious, once Williamson succumbs to the inevitable, how are these guys going to cover the election? Like, they just support Joe Biden and talk about Trump? I mean, do they just become full MSNBC at
Looks
that
that way.
Like,
Certainly
what else are they going to
to
do? What else are they going to do with the politics that they've claimed to have? Like, it seems like they didn't really think this through. Like, they're trying to maintain this indie credibility by not backing Biden, by backing some bullshit candidate. But what do you do when that candidate's not running anymore? Like, how are you even going to pretend to be this counter to the Democratic Party left commentator when the choices become Biden and Trump and you've painted yourself into this corner?
Exactly. That's an excellent point. Even the Vanguard guys are smart enough not to paint themselves into that corner. The Vanguard guys are saying, yeah, we're for Marianne for now, but we will be for Cornel in the general, right? They're at least giving themselves an exit ramp, right? So when the Vanguard guys
may
have
down
more
the
foresight
line,
than you do. Well, no, but I mean, even
I may reconcile with my son.
Right.
We might have an on-air, like, Jerry Springer style reunion with me and Zach.
Me and Zach, right. Exactly. Even they have the foresight to know, okay, when Marianne is no longer in the game, we can't just go to Biden. Our audience ain't going to go for that. So they're saying, yeah, we'll support Cornel in the general. Even they have the foresight that apparently Kyle and Crystal do not. Let's let him finish here.
Great. And then what? If you actually want to win, if you actually care about getting the country to change for the better, there's an intelligent way to do that and not a way that self-disenfranchises you from being taken seriously.
How does it self-disenfranchise you? As Russell just explained, as we've explained several times on the show, come November 2024, when the actual deal goes down, Cornel West's name will be on the ballot in at least 40 states. Marianne Williamson's name will be nowhere. So who's disenfranchising themselves?
So I don't know what he's thinking. I would love to ask him, like, what exactly is the goal here? Is the goal to get to 5%?
I would absolutely love to see Cornel interviewed by Kyle and have him try and ask these tough questions.
Does he understand that the only way the Green Party or the Libertarian Party or any of these other parties would be viable is if you get ranked choice voting first? Does he understand that? I don't know. I don't know. Everybody in this conversation is kind of annoying the shit out of me, because the real answer at this point in time is
feelings mutual,
we are having a primary. There is a candidate who represents Bernie's values, and Bernie is refusing to support them.
Let me just play that last part 1 second here.
At this point in time is we are having a primary.
No, we're not.
There is a candidate who represents Bernie's values.
We're not having a primary.
To support them.
No, he refuses to support them because there is no primary. The Democrats have said there is no primary. They're not facilitating a primary. There's no debates. If you try and jump the line with some New Hampshire stunt that you've been pumping for the last fucking 6 months, they're just going to disqualify New Hampshire.
Oh, and that's going to change everything. That's going to turn everything around. Hey,
Right.
hey, dipshit. You're talking about pissing off the establishment and pissing off the mainstream media. What the fuck do you think their narrative is going to be if, in theory, you made Biden look bad by winning in New Hampshire? What do you think the corporate media is going to say about that? They're empowering Trump. They're empowering Trump. Look, they're making Biden look bad. They're undermining our successful incumbent. Right? What do you think they're going to say about you?
Right. And look, Biden is not going to participate in the New Hampshire primary. So there's going to be this giant asterisk next to the New Hampshire primary that Biden wasn't even trying. Biden didn't even try to win those early states last time. You have to give Biden's team a little credit. It's not easy to push a corpse over the finish line. He actually has a fairly competent political team around him, which his predecessor obviously did not. You had the Jennifer Palmieri's running the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Huma Abedin with the husband laptop and all the bullshit. Biden's team is actually not a bad team. They can't be that bad if they push Biden over the finish line once.
Sure.
They know they're not going to set themselves up for embarrassment in New Hampshire. If New Hampshire is bucking the party, they're just going to say, we are not participating in this primary. Therefore, the result does not fucking matter. We already know the media is going to parrot that line for them at the top of their lungs, which means whatever happens in New Hampshire is irrelevant. It's irrelevant, both from a narrative standpoint and from a delegate counting standpoint, because those delegates will be disqualified if New Hampshire goes first. And so there is nothing happening. There is nothing happening. It's just a giant smoke and mirrors act that they're trying to pull. And now they're doing that at the expense of if they didn't want to support Cornel West, they could at least speak well of Cornel West so that, as Russell said, once the Marianne Williamson campaign implodes, they'll have something to do during general election season besides just campaigning for Joe Biden, because who wants to watch that on the internet? They can watch that on TV.
Right. Yeah, we covered this when we did that breakdown. I mean, Kyle already gets a fraction of his subscriber numbers that actually watch his show. Who the fuck's gonna watch on YouTube to see somebody give you the same take that you could get on MSNBC and CNN? Like that is not what people come to YouTube for. They come for an alternative to that point of view. And right now they're maintaining the illusion that they're offering that alternative by latching themselves onto this Marianne Williamson campaign. And maybe that's why they won't let it go. Maybe that's at core the reason, because it's the only basis on which they're claiming to be different from what you would get on cable news. Once that's gone, how do they even make the claim? It's really like watching a slow motion car wreck.
Please clap.